The days of Quarles, Sutton, and Clowney seem forever ago. We're talking South Carolina defensive front with Will Gunter, Fox Sports. They're in Greenville and Columbia, South Carolina. Will, we always appreciate the time, man. Good to have you.
Great to have you. We're not far. I think we're about 79 days, 78 days from California, and I believe it was Hawaii out in Sydney. So we're inching closer. Media days are just around the corner. So good times ahead.
And you want to be a little bit more optimistic there. So you take the very first game and say, hey, that's go day. That's counting down to that hour right then. I like that.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Any football, matter of fact, tonight, in just a short while, Alabama and Clemson on the SEC network. So it's a replay, but hey, any kind of football will do right now. So that'll be the plans for tonight.
Well, it's not too early, obviously, to break down those Clemson Tigers for game number 12.
That's right. That's right.
You can always do that. Let's talk some not-so-good news from the 2015 and that defensive front. By any measurement, Will, it was one of the worst lines in out of Power 5 college play, especially in the SEC. They finished near the bottom in sacks, points scored, yards allowed, overall defensive. But the metrics that apply straight to the defensive line, they were about 95th in the country in some of the advanced metrics. Markavius Lewis comes back. You got Boosie Whitlow, Darius English, guys that made some plays in the backfield last year. And we've been waiting for Dante Sawyer to make his mark as well along that defensive front. So based on the guys that you've got coming back, before we talk about some of these newbies, your thoughts about some of the guys that have been around a little bit?
You know, the biggest addition to the defensive line is not a player. It's a coach. It's Lance Thompson, in my opinion. Lance Thompson has 15 years of experience in the SEC coaching at places like Alabama and Auburn. He spent some time at Georgia Tech, obviously not an SEC school, but nothing against. I have to say it every day on the radio. I'm not trying to knock the former staff. I'm not trying to put them down. But the upgrade in coaching, not just the defensive staff as a whole, but defensive line, I think is something that can't go without discussion as we count down the days. The talent, Mark, in my opinion, is there. If you're one of those people that want to go in recruiting rankings, and I'm a recruiting geek, I love it. I follow it. I get into it. If you want to go in recruiting rankings, you want to go in offers, South Carolina has talent. Dante Sawyer, you mentioned him. He was out this spring with a shoulder injury. And Kelsey Griffin, a senior, is back for and Kelsey Griffin was one of the more highly rated defensive linemen the South Carolina Gamecocks have brought in the past few years. And they form a very strong pair up the middle. Abu Lamine is a senior and was a junior college player that picked Alabama over a committable offer picked South Carolina over a committable offer from Alabama. Taylor Stallworth is a kid who they've had a lot of high thoughts on. He's suffering an injury and dealing with some weight problems right now. And they've got some freshmen that I know we'll talk about. So the interior of the line is in my opinion, is got talent. And then you look at the defensive end position, Markavius Lewis, or Quay Lewis as we call him, was the number one junior college defensive end coming out a year ago and is back for a senior season. I do think they've got to find another defensive end to complement him, another guy to get to the quarterback. But that comes back to Lance Thompson and coaching these players up and an improvement again at the coaching position, which I don't think is being given enough credit, because the talent, in my opinion, is there to make a drastic jump when you look at this defensive line.
You know, if you look at the sheer numbers, Will, typically the good teams in college football will have 2 to 3 guys along the front, maybe at the outside linebacker position as well, who are getting double-digit tackles for loss, close to double-digit sacks. You mentioned Darius English, probably the most productive guy when it comes to getting into opponents' backfield last year, with 6 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. You mentioned Quay Lewis, 4.5 and 3 there, and Dante Sawyer, a guy that was much heralded coming into the program, 2.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Now, some of these new guys, you look along the defensive front, and this is Will Muschamp taking his hold in recruiting despite getting the late start. We talked about it at the time. He had to play catch-up, and he did it rather well between Stephon Taylor, Aaron Thompson, and Kobe Smith. These incoming guys, there's 3 of the top 50 defensive linemen in high school football coming into college football.
Yeah, Stephon Taylor will be interesting. He is on campus now, but he had to have labrum surgery upon arriving on campus. I think this is just my opinion. I think there is depth at that position, as we just talked about. I would actually be surprised if Stephon Taylor played this year, just because, again, labrum surgery just a few days ago. Today is what is today, the 9th? Labrum surgery just not more than 2 weeks ago. He's got to recover from that. Kobe Smith is a guy that you mentioned that decommitted from Kentucky and was an early enrollee, went through spring practice and drew the praise of Will Muschamp and of defensive coordinator Travaris Robinson and defensive line coach Lance Thompson. So you might have Kobe Smith ahead of Stephen Taylor right off the bat. Taylor was more highly rated, more highly recruited, but again, that injury could set him back, could cause him to redshirt. And Aaron Thompson, we'll see. He's going to come in a little light. He's in the 265, 270 range. It's likely that he redshirts his first year because, again, they've got guys. They're not void of depth. If there's a position, if you want to talk, South Carolina lacks depth in 2016, but the two positions they do not lack it is defensive line and linebacker. It's a matter of the cream rising to the crop, so to speak. So Kobe Smith, I think, finds his way in there when you talk about those freshmen. Stephen Taylor, we'll see. He's talented enough that he can make an impact, but I think that labrum surgery, that shoulder surgery, may set him back just enough to where they just elect to redshirt him, let him go through Jeff Dillman's strength and conditioning program, and have him as a redshirt freshman ready to make an impact next season.
Hey, Will, we know from previous conversations that you're happy with the Will Muschamp hire, especially on the defensive side. I don't know that anybody can argue with the hire from that standpoint. His track record is just too solid. And also, as you just mentioned, with a new defensive line coach, are those upgrades because of just flat out coaching from a motivational standpoint, being able to push guys to the limit, make them run them through the proverbial brick wall, or is this a foundational thing from a technique standpoint where these guys, you just expect them to be better coached X's and O's?
It's a good question. It's an opinion that I have. I'm 5'6", 5'7", and I'm kind of fat. I'm in no way a football talent evaluator, and I, again, don't want to knock the former staff. With that being said, you go from Deke Adams, who had 3 or 4 years of Power 5 experience, 1 at North Carolina and 3 at South Carolina, to, again, Lance Thompson, who has a track record of developing defensive linemen. He's coached other positions as well, but has developed defensive linemen. My personal opinion is that we're talking an improvement in coaching, an improvement in hand technique and getting off blocks. South Carolina for the last 3 years has struggled getting off of blocks at the point of attack. And to me, that's coaching. I follow, again, I'll say it again, I follow recruiting. The talent has been okay. It's not been on the level of Kelsey, Quarles, and Melvin Ingram and Jadeveon Clowney. I understand that, but it's not been bad either. It's not been so bad that the results that they've received have been warranted. So, yes, I'm going to go with the fact that you add Lance Thompson and his experience. You add Will Muschamp and the experience that he has overall as a defensive coordinator, and even Travaris Robinson and the experience. But when we're talking defensive line, yes, I think just based on coaching, I expect a drastic improvement in 2016.
All right, only 18 teams in FBS play were worse against the run. They defended the pass with just 20 sacks as well. The South Carolina defensive front hopes to be much better in 2016. Will Gunter from Fox Sports helping us break it down. Thanks a lot, Will.
Hey, anytime. And I will say this to finish your point. We didn't talk a whole lot of defensive ends. What you just said is right. They have to find a pass rush in 2016. When you talk defensive line for South Carolina, the pass rush is key. Kier Thomas, I want to add his name, is a young freshman out of the Miami area, enrolled early as a kid that they need to have an impact because they're going to look to find a complement to Marquavius Lewis, whether it's moving Bootsy Whitlow back to defensive end from the Buck position, or it's utilizing anybody else, maybe Darius English But you bring up that point, and I apologize. I know we're running short on time, but you're right. Getting to the quarterback will be the key in 2016, and that is the one massive question mark because the depth is there, and I think the talent is there, but they've got to find a way to generate a pass rush without using blitz.
Okay, Kira Thomas, defensive end, 3-star, 6'2", 249. We'll see if he can help out that pass rush and those sacks number jump as well. All right, Will, appreciate the time, man.
Anytime. Always appreciate joining you and talking some football.